Hey everybody, it's Chad Himes here with the Win, Make, Give podcast, joined by my co-host, Bob Stewart. Bob, how are you doing today?
Chad, hi, I'm good.
Good, excellent. We are here today as we continue season 2, where we are talking about winning. And boy, we were doing our research on winning, and we found someone who's winning. So I want to waste no time bringing her onto the call in this gorgeous room filled with beautiful flowers all around her everywhere. And that would be our guest today, Charlene Wheeless. Hello, Charlene. Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm sure this is going to be the most fun I've had all day today. So thank you.
It's a low bar
sure hope so.
from us. Like we're not that much fun.
Speak for yourself, Bob.
We have serious questions here, Chad. Serious questions.
Yes, I do my best to bring serious questions, and then we let you have some fun in there. Charlene, before we get going into all of this, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience so they have some idea of who it is they're getting to hear from today?
Sure. So as you said, I'm Charlene Wheeless. I say I'm a woman of many facets, but then aren't we all, right? So I'm an author. I have my debut book is being released in May. A keynote speaker, an eternal optimist. I love all things dogs. And I should also say that I serve as a senior advisor for equity and justice for APCO Worldwide.
And we can hear the dog in the background there as you're saying that. All right. Perfect. All right. So, and puppy ran out of the room on us. We hope we didn't scare poor puppy off.
So he's 14 and he's deaf. So I pretty much just let him do whatever he wants. So he Zoom bombs every call I have, and
he's like Bob for us. We just let him do whatever he wants.
Right,
shows up and does all these great things. All right. So Charlene, we're talking about you and all the things you mentioned in there. And we're going to even talk about some of the things you didn't mention yet.
Okay.
Right off the bat, you mentioned that you're an author and you've got the book that's coming out, and exciting that we're getting this opportunity to talk with you. Tell us about the book. How could people go get it right now? Pre-order the book, be ready for it, whatever.
Well, you can pre-order the book on Amazon right now. If you just go into Amazon and search either for my name, Charlene Wheeless, Wheelles, as in Sam, and the name of the book is "You Are Enough: Reclaiming Your Career and Your Life with Purpose, Passion, and Unapologetic Authenticity." So It's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, and you say reclaiming your career and life with purpose, passion, and unapologetic authenticity.
Right.
I got it on the screen in front of me, so that's the only reason I could have pulled it. So let's just start right there, Charlene. Grab a lesson from the book that talks about winning with our audience that you could just give us a little nugget from the book that'll make us all want to grab a copy immediately.
Gosh, there are so many lessons in the book, and I think if I had to choose just two, I know you asked for one, but I'm a woman, and so we kind of make up our own rules. So I'll give you two. One is if you're going to reclaim your life and you're going to live with purpose and passion and authenticity, I think you have to know your value, right? Know your worth and own your value. Right. There's so many times people just let other people put stuff on them, and then we take it and we own it, and it devalues us. And so that's one of the, I think, really important lessons in the book. And the other, which goes along with that, is you are enough. Right.
That's the whole
enough.
Title of the book, right?
Right. And that's actually the whole purpose of really writing the book, is just showing that path so that people can understand that they don't have to do what a lot of us do. I did it, certainly being a Black female, climbing the corporate ladder, which is you turn yourself inside and out, upside down, backwards and forwards, to meet these, what I think now are antiquated constructs in order to be successful, right? And when you get there, you're kind of stuck. You're like, well, is this all there is? And I haven't really done this on my terms. So, when cancer made me rethink all of that. Right. And so when I came out of cancer, which I know we'll talk about, I just had to recreate my life. I had to reclaim my life and reclaim my career. And so I didn't set out to write a book. It happened. It came to me one day that I needed to write a book to just kind of share these lessons so that people don't spend so much time just trying to fit into something that doesn't fit, right?
Charlene, do you think that we end up in that position because we haven't clearly kind of forecast what we want our life to look like? And so, these influences from other people or some
Mhm.
job that we got into and kept going down, maybe not the right path for us. Do you think it has something to do with we don't spend enough time, kind of thinking about what our dreams and our own passions might even be?
Well, I certainly think that that's some of it. Of course, when you were talking, I was thinking, "We." Who says "we"? You got a rat in your pocket, but I think what happens, and especially now, because I have two adult daughters who've gone, through college, the whole bit, and there's so much pressure, even for kids, young adults. They're going into college. Claim your major, right? What is it that you're going to do for the rest of your life? Which is ridiculous because if an 18-year-old came home and said, "Hey, I just met this person, I'm going to marry them and spend the rest of my life with them." And we would say, "There's no way you're mature enough to make that kind of decision," right? Yet you're mature enough to decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And so, yes, I think that there's a lot of pressure to say, "Oh, I'm going to be this or I'm going to do that." And then we end up down this path and we end up, transforming ourselves, not always for the better, in order to continue down that path. And unless something happens to you that interrupts that, many people don't actually achieve their purpose. They just continue down that path and then they end up with something that I think is the worst thing that can happen to you, at the end of your life or when you hit that half century mark, which is that you're not satisfied and you're not living your life and you're not living your truth. Right. So I think that we have to be really careful about making people and our kids or other people in our life go down a certain path and say, "That's the path you have to live." I mean, why not live 10 different paths? Right.
I'm sitting over here and I just want to, the mind being blown on that concept. You say, if my daughter, when she was 18, had come home and said, "Dad, this is who I'm marrying," I would have told her she's crazy. Yet we do put them in that situation.
Hmm.
Yet, thankfully, I do have friends growing up, Dave and Julie. They were 13. They met each other. They're still married happily. So
Wow.
sometimes that path we do fall into, and I guess it could be there for us. There are those people who know I'm going to be a doctor or an astronaut or a
Right.
firefighter. It's a calling I feel within me. Yet
Hmm.
it's amazing how you put that, Charlene. That's just amazing. Now uh, you've mentioned a bunch of things in there, and one of the things that and we'll keep coming back to some of those things and diving deeper on some of those things. You've taken many paths.
I have.
We were talking before the call. You had a career. Bob's wearing a Washington hat in honor
Yes.
of you today. You're now a speaker. You're an author.
Mhm.
You are one of the most influential people in the PR industry and all that. You've taken
Mhm.
many paths. Talk to us about that journey of your own of multiple paths. How did they lead one to the other? How did they connect, not
Mhm.
connect? How did that all happen in your world?
Right. Well, I guess the common denominator in all of them is me, right? So,
Yes.
and I grew up in Oakland, California. That's where I was born. Not the good part, as I always like to say. And I ultimately was raised by a single mother. And I'm the first one in my family. I have three siblings. I'm the first one in my family to go to college. Sorry, my dog there.
That's okay.
um, the first one to go to college and kind of chart a completely different path.
Do you mind
And
me asking why? Why do you think you decided to chart that path at that age?
Um,
What did
yeah,
college mean to you in terms of growing up in Oakland? And was that something you wanted to do? Like you were like, I'm going to college.
no, it was never a conversation in my house.
Really?
No one else in my family had gone to college, and since then has gone to college. Everybody graduated from high school and started working. And I'll tell you, when I was in high school, I ultimately went to high school in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because when my parents divorced, my mother got this brilliant idea to leave California and go to New Mexico. I said, okay. And she said, and you're coming. And I said, okay. What are you going to do?
Yeah. What other option
So,
did you have?
but I tell you, people come in and out of your lives at really interesting times, right? And sometimes they stay a long time, sometimes they stay just for a little while. When I was a senior in high school, I was 16, and I was a cheerleader. I've been a cheerleader most of my life, and I met this guy from Texas who was a cheerleader in college, and we became friends. And he was in college; he was a freshman. I was a senior in high school. The only thing we had in common is that he was originally from New Mexico as well, and for some reason he and I just really hit it off. It wasn't a relationship, a romance, or anything like that. But he told me that he said, Charlene, you're too small for New Mexico. You need to have a bigger life. And, it was really strange because no one had ever said that to me before. And I never really thought about it before. And so he planted that seed. And so I went to college. I went to New Mexico State University, and he was at Texas Tech, and he was a cheerleader there. His name is Billy Smith. We're still friends today. And and when I was in New Mexico, and I was a cheerleader there as well, and he said, "You're too big for Albuquerque. You're too big for New Mexico. You need to come to Texas." Right? Because
Everything's
Everything's big in
That's
Texas.
right.
Right. So I transferred to Texas Tech University, and I cheered there for a year, and later went back to New Mexico. But he just kind of planted that seed in high school that there was more. Right. And I don't even know where he came from. It's like he dropped out of the sky, because there was no real reason for us to know one another. And he just made such an incredible, just an indelible mark on my life. And even in my book and my acknowledgments, I have a line there. I tell him, Billy, without you, there would be no me as I am today. And it's
That's
just,
awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. Bob, do you have a hat? Can you make the swap mid
What do
podcast
you
for
mean?
Texas?
I
No,
love
I don't.
it.
I don't have a Texas Tech hat. I have a Washington Bullets hat.
That's
I've got all my
outrageous.
Washington hats.
Oh, that's old school.
That is
Bullets,
old
that's old
school. That is
school.
old school. Yeah.
Now,
Right?
Bob, why the Washington hat? What's with Washington? Because we mentioned you're wearing Washington.
Oh, I don't know. I really like the Bullets. Like it's just a cool. They took it away. Anytime they take something away from me, I'm like, I need one of those. So.
Yeah, Bob has issues with that. Now, it was Charlene. He's wearing Washington in tribute to you. You were a cheerleader with
Yeah.
the now Washington Football Club. Then,
Mhm.
before they went all through that, talk a little bit about the experience. I mean, we all have this image of the National Football League cheerleaders, thanks to
Yeah.
what all these teams have done, and specifically, of course, the Cowboys making such a thing
Mhm.
about it. But talk about winning as a cheerleader. Talk about the lessons learned in that environment of the National Football League that you had
Yeah.
time to enjoy.
Yeah, so I was a cheerleader for 4 years, a captain on the team for 3, and, when I graduated from college, I had a job offer in the Washington, D.C. area and a job offer in Denver, and I was dating a guy who lived in Denver, so my plan was to go to Colorado, to move to Denver, and then a week before I was supposed to move, I called him and said, I think I'm going to go to DC instead. Right. Which is kind of what I do. So he's like, okay. And the reality was he was really good looking, but not particularly nice to me. So, I think I just kind of knew I needed to do something different. So I came to DC.
Because
Hated
you are
it.
enough.
Right, because I am enough, right? I came to DC. I hated it because I didn't understand DC. DC runs on politics and power. Albuquerque, New Mexico, not so much, not right. So I didn't really get it, and so I said, well, after a year, I thought I'd move, I'd leave, and go back home. But that didn't sound that great either, quite honestly. And I was on the phone with Timmy Smith, running back for the football team.
Yeah.
Timmy and I went to college together at Texas Tech. And so we were on the phone commiserating because he had, a really great year. And
He was Super Bowl MVP, wasn't he? Didn't he run for
yes, he had one really great year.
Yeah. Like he ran for
And-
like 200 yards in the Super Bowl or something crazy. Yeah.
Right. It's so funny that guys know that stuff, right? But so he and I were on the phone, and he was lamenting the fact that he was not prepared for all this fame, right? And that women were like throwing themselves at him and proposing to him, and he was just a kid from Texas. And I was telling him how much I really disliked it here. And he said, well, why don't you try out for cheerleader? That's what you've always done. And I thought, there's an idea, right? That's a great way to get to know the place. So I signed up. I went in, to tryouts, and it was me and 400 women trying out for 40 spots. And I thought, holy smokes, what is this? Now, I have to pause for a minute and go back a bit because my true, dyed in the wool team are the Oakland Raiders. It's the Oakland Raiders through and through. And when I was around 10 years old, my mother took me to an Oakland Raiders game because we rented a house from Ben Davidson, who was a player for the Oakland Raiders at the time. And we had 50-yard seats, which meant nothing to me. But my mother was a diehard football fan, and we're sitting there in the in the seats, and all of a sudden, these glamazon women show up in this sparkling black and silver, and these boots and these pom poms, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything more beautiful in my life. I'm going to do that. Right. But I didn't even remember that until I was in that auditorium in DC trying out for cheerleader. And needless to say, I made the team.
Yeah.
And it was for 4 years. It was a fantastic experience. Got to go to the Super Bowl, the America Bowl. At the time that I was cheering, I do have to say, we wore more clothes than the women do now. That's important to me to say.
You had bigger hair too. I saw a hair picture of you guys.
All that hair.
Yeah, there's a lot of hair.
Yeah, it was the late 80s, it was the 90s.
That's right.
It was all about big hair, right? How fast can you whip that hair around? And when I cheered also, it was during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So when we went on a lot of trips postseason, we went to a lot of military bases and performed. But rather than performing for soldiers, we were performing for children whose parents were deployed. And in many cases, both parents were deployed. So it really took on a special meaning for us because it was, we would go to these different military bases and perform, and then we'd be paired up with these little girls. And it was so powerful because I was now that cheerleader that the little girls were looking at and saying, "Oh my gosh." Right? It was so much fun. It was so amazing. And I met wonderful people who I'm still friends with now. Some people I don't ever want to see again. And, but not friends with the football players because we had a very strict no fraternizing rule policy.
You're probably thanking your stars that Daniel Snyder hadn't taken over yet. I won't make you comment on that.
Let's not get into all that.
You mentioned the previous owner earlier, so I'm assuming you held that person in some high regard. Well, let me ask you a question. Yeah, Jack Kent Cook, an icon and very much like Washington, D.C. in a lot of our heads.
Yeah,
Guy, right?
people felt certain different ways about him, but I tell you, he was great to us. With the cheerleaders, he was respectful. And by the way, when all the cheerleading teams were going to, two-piece uniforms and showing a little more and doing a little more, and he was not about it. He was like, you absolutely will not have two pieces. You all are the girls next door, the first ladies of football. And he really respected that brand. So I hold him in high regard.
You seem, and well, obviously we don't know you, right? But you seem like somebody that has a certain air of confidence. And I wonder, did that come from cheerleading? Like for me, I draw my confidence from a few places. I was raised by a single mom, and I was the oldest son in that, and so there was a lot of confidence in my mom instilling this trust in me. And then sports were another thing that for me, like as a child and a kid in high school, like you get confidence when you play sports. Was cheerleading a source of confidence for you, or where did you come about what seems to be this air of confidence that you have?
Yeah, no.
No.
I laugh because when you're a cheerleader, you're around. So on our team, we have 40 women. So you're around 40 people who have been told they're beautiful their entire lives, right? So you want to talk about a pot of insecurity, right? So but it's like anything when you're performing, you become someone else. So while, as so many women suffer from insecurity, and I certainly was not immune to that. But what you do learn as a performer is how to come out of yourself and how to reach and how to stretch and how to embody something else, right? And so I think out of that embodiment, what that looks like to people and had ultimately become is confidence and a belief in yourself, if that makes sense.
That does. That's interesting. So you found that in the performance, essentially.
Right, exactly.
How
And
many
it's
times have you performed to build confidence? And I don't mean that even as a cheerleader anymore.
mhm,
I mean that as in a way of developing that confidence that you would perform until you became confident as a keynote speaker, or perform until you
mhm.
really became confident as a mom and all of that. How has that played into life from that lesson that you had?
Oh, I think I learned early on the importance, for me anyway, of being able to channel other icons or other people that I admired, right? And so, and that really started with my mother, who was, as I mentioned earlier, a single mom. She worked very, very hard so that I could have a life. And so my strength comes from her. I channel her. At when I was building my career, there weren't a lot or very many role models that looked like me. So I would then have to think about, well, who can I channel when I get ready to go into this room, right? When I decided to become a speaker, I started channeling Oprah, actually. Right? It's like, where's my inner Oprah?
If
Because
you got to go, you might as well go big. And there's
right,
Oprah.
right. But you know what Oprah did, and I think still does, is, you know, she speaks in service to her audience, not the other way around. And so that was really helpful to me, right? Because when you go on stage and to be a speaker, and my goal is to impart, knowledge, information, and inspire people, right? So it's in service of them, not in service of me, right? So I think throughout my entire career, I've always just tried to channel who I wanted to be, the kind of person I wanted to be until I could become that.
Until you were enough.
Right,
Right.
right.
Yeah, I'll keep coming back to it for you since you're
Mhm.
not going to say it. I'll just keep saying it. All right. Now, you mentioned in there not a lot of women who looked like me. And I
Mhm.
love in your bio, you have it worded, and I'm going to read this to make sure I get it right, that you have busted up stereotypes, breaking down barriers, and flat out refusing to be ignored, pigeonholed, or forgotten, which is pretty amazing. I want your writer who helped you put that bio together, if that didn't just fall off your tongue. Let's
Right.
talk to our audience about winning, okay, with busting up stereotypes, breaking down barriers, and flat out refusing to be ignored, pigeonholed, or forgotten. Help us and help our audience as whether they're tall, short, skinny, fat, they're a certain nationality, whatever it might be. There is some sort of stereotype or barrier that they're always facing in life. Help us win through
Absolutely.
that.
So, in being a Black female, you're told early on, most people, we've all heard it these days, about the talk that you get, and for a Black female, the talk that you get is that you have to work twice as hard and be twice as good to be considered equal. And even sometimes that's not enough. And that is instilled in you from the moment, you can talk. You're taught that, and you also learn through life experiences that people are going to put all kinds of things on you, and you're either going to own it and become it. And when I say that people put things on you, a lot of times it's based in their biases, right? So I've had experiences throughout my life that um, where other people remind me that I'm not enough, or try to tell me that I'm not enough. When I first tried out for cheerleader when I was 11 years old, and I was in junior high school, and I made it as the fourth alternate, right? So imagine how bad you have to be, right, to be the fourth alternate. And I thought I was kind of talented, so I was a little miffed, but anyway. But I was a shy little girl. And within a couple of months, I was put on the team. And I thought, well, how did this happen? And my sponsor, because we didn't have coaches at the time, we had sponsors. She said, and she said this to an 11-year-old. She said, well, Charlene, you're Black, so we thought you'd be a troublemaker. But after getting to know you, we see you're a nice little girl, so we put you on the team. Right? So, and you hear those things throughout your life. So at some point, and if you take it in, you feel really bad about yourself because you start to believe the things that people will put on you. So, at some point, I just decided that I wasn't going to do that. I couldn't do that. I couldn't exist in this world like that. So then once I went into the work world and I started experiencing all of the macro and micro aggressions that happen every darn day, I just realized I have a choice here. I can take it, or I can decide that I'm going to be the change agent, and I'm going to be all about transformation. And I'm going to be the one who says, you may yell at me, Mr. Executive, until I start crying. But you know what? That says more about you than it does about me. And I'm not going to own it. And I'm going to be the one to prove to people that your stereotype is just that, a stereotype, that we're not all this way. We're not, and so that's really what it was. It was, there was never a shortage of people telling me what I couldn't do. Right. And for me, if you want to see me like kick butt and take names, tell me I can't do something. Right?
Let me, can I just, I want to dive in on that for a second.
Sure.
Is it like actions that like you get somebody say, oh, you can't do that thing. And do you tell them, no, I can do that thing. And then you go do it, or do you just go, nah, whatever. And then you go do that thing. Like, is it action, I guess?
Yeah, it's very much kind of action oriented. I mean, quite frankly, that's how I've built my career. I have been, my first executive position, I was a vice president in a company at 35 years old. It was a multi-billion-dollar global company, and I was the first Black female executive that the company ever had. And that's pretty much been my entire career trajectory, has been the first Black female fill in the blank, right, at the company. And it was very much about, it wasn't like I had somebody a role model that I would say, oh, she's done that, so I'm going to do that, right? It was people saying, well, we've never had, a Black female executive here. And so for me, it's like, well, I'm going to show you how that happens, right? And then it just became, that just kind of became my mission, is busting up these stereotypes and breaking down barriers and refusing to be ignored. I have this lecture series called Lessons from Being Invisible, because women and women of color are often invisible in the workplace. And, I could tell you stories that, you just couldn't believe. And, it's like, I refuse to be invisible. I matter. We all matter. And I refuse to stand by and watch other women and men be made to feel that way. So it really just became my rallying cry. And I'm very, very proud of the trails I've blazed, because I believe if there can be one, there can be another, right? It's lonely being the only one, but it starts with one.
But then you get to be that person that later some little girl's looking at and going, hey, I can do that now because she did it, right?
And that's what you hope, and I've had people, and it's not just, minorities, but just, women in general. And we all know about the issues around women in the workplace. But I've had professional women say to me, I came to work for you because you wear high heels and have blue nail polish, right? Because everywhere that they've worked prior to that, they were told that they couldn't wear heels, right? Or that they couldn't wear nail polish or different things. And it's like, no, 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 no. You're a girl. You get to be a girl, right? So you put on your high heels and you wear them proudly, because you don't lose brain cells the higher your heels are. Right?
Well, in Bob's case, he does. He puts on his
only
6-inch
Jordans,
stilettos.
only Jordans, Chad. You know me.
Now, I just heard our whole audience with a hallelujah, amen, as you were saying that. So thank you for saying it. The people who ever have the mindset of, well, we've never had a Black female executive, we've never had a under 30 exec. Who cares, right? You just never have, because you just haven't yet. So let's get over that and get rid of that. But you mentioned in there a lecture series on the lessons from being invisible.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be one that works with the world of winning that our audience needs to hear today. So what is a lesson that comes from that you can share with everybody? And men might have to wait if it's focused towards the women, yet that's okay. We need to hear it too.
It's choice, not chance, that changes your life.
Oh, say that again.
It's choice, not chance, that changes your life. Right. So what I mean by that is, we often find ourselves, and by we, I mean women, but it's everybody. We often find ourselves in situations that are unfair, that, we're told to put our heads down and work hard, and somebody is going to pluck you out of obscurity, right, and promote you, which I've never really seen that happen. And so, but we feel like we have to sit in the state of stagnation, or lack of growth, and we wait for someone to rescue us. But actually, you can rescue yourself. You just have to make the choice to do it. And so when I've been in situations that weren't working for me, I didn't wait for somebody to rescue me. I made a choice. Sometimes I chose to stay in that uncomfortable situation because I was about breaking barriers. Other times I said, this isn't working for me, and this is making me feel bad about myself. So I'm going to rescue myself, and I'm going to make a choice to do something different, to go somewhere else. Right. And, in order to do that, you need to have some fearlessness is really important, tenacity, resilience, and perseverance. And we all have those, and we just have to know how to dig deep into them. And I tell people frequently that, you can change your entire life with 7 seconds. And I call it 7 seconds of courage, right? And you only need 7 seconds to make a difficult decision. and you just take that deep breath and you count out those 7 seconds and you do it. Whether that is to tell your boss you're leaving, whether that's to tell your spouse you're leaving, whether that's to tell, whether that's to propose to your future spouse or whatever it is, or get out of a situation that isn't working. Just tap into your 7 seconds of courage, because it's choice, not chance, that changes your life.
Love
I, I
that.
think I think yeah, that's fantastic, and I think that's 7 seconds how you say it, because science has shown us it actually takes 6 seconds for emotions to be absorbed into our body.
Oh, wow.
So
There you go.
after 6 seconds, anything you're doing is a choice.
Right.
So you feel fear, that's for 6 seconds
Mhm.
at the most, your
Mhm.
body has absorbed it. You feel happiness, that's 6 seconds, your body has absorbed it, and you've
Right.
chosen to continue past that. So 7 seconds of courage is going to get you through that emotional 6 seconds to have you actually making a decision that matters. So that's
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm so gonna use that.
you got it. Not
I'll give
mine,
you
it's
credit.
science.
I'll give
So
you credit. I'm so gonna use that.
well, that's okay, because I'm going to start telling people that it's choice, not chance, that changes your life. So we're going to
Yeah.
have that one you printed on something. Okay. Way back near the beginning, you threw it out there. We haven't even talked about it, even though it's actually one of the first things that kind of was shared with me about you to make the connection. And that is, you're a cancer survivor.
Yes, I am. I am
So
a cancer survivor.
again, we talk about winning on our
Mhm.
podcast. That's what we're focused about. There's nothing winning matters more than that fight
Mhm.
against cancer in that situation. Talk about, as much as you want, what it
Um,
was, what you dealt with, and the lessons again learned from it that have
mhm.
helped you in life ever since.
Sure, sure. So, and yes, I'm very open about my cancer journey, because I believe that I'm a firm believer that if something negative happens to you and you overcome it, you have a responsibility to turn it into something positive for someone else. Right. So I'm very open, and it's all over my book as well. It's My book is kind of the combination of these lessons from being invisible, as well as how those career lessons became life lessons as I was going through my battle with cancer. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was in 2017 at the top of my game. I was killing it, um, but I knew I wasn't well. But I didn't care because I was killing it, and at work, I went to the doctor, and I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer, which completely threw me for a loop because I had no idea that cancer, it just never even entered my mind, even though you hear about it all the time. And so I went through the protocol of surgery. I had both my breasts removed, even though I only had cancer in one of them, but I didn't want to be faced with that again later. I went through chemotherapy and I went through radiation. And the thing about cancer is, it messes with your mind because, people really prepare you. You have all kinds of support for this fight for your life. But for me, the hardest part was not the treatment. The hardest part was when I finished the treatment, and everybody kind of expects you to be who you were. They want you to be who you were. But for me, when I came out of my cancer treatment, and I didn't work during my treatment, my doctor said your life is way too stressful. You won't get better. And so, my 7-year treatment um, for breast cancer has been a 3.5-year treatment. I had 9 surgeries in 3 years, and I'm still not finished. So it turned into this cluster. No pun intended. And so when I came out of the traditional treatment, um, I was completely lost. I had such a strong sense of self, but suddenly I came out and I didn't know who I was anymore. I looked in the mirror and, I didn't even recognize myself. I was bald. I had this mutilated body. I mean, think about this, going from being an NFL cheerleader to this, and how much of your existence is wrapped up in your physicality, which I didn't know. So I found that I didn't recognize the life I had anymore, and I didn't fit into the life that I was in. I mean, it was so strange. And it got to the point where around the house, I would turn down pictures of myself before, of what I looked like before cancer, because it made me so sad because I could not get back to who that person was. So for me, I had to figure out what my new normal was going to be, and how was I going to win as this new person and who this new person was. So I took a big pivot, right? I left the corporate world and the career I had spent 33 years building, and I decided to create the life I wanted rather than the life I had before. To your earlier point, right? Is sometimes you go down this path and you just end up, and maybe that's not where you're supposed to be. And so, a couple of things that, that I learned is, prioritize yourself, and you have to take care of yourself. And I had to forgive myself for getting cancer, which I know sounds strange, because it's not your fault that you have cancer, that you had cancer, but it was my fault that I led this incredibly stressful lifestyle. And um, and that has to have some kind of impact on your immune system. So you have to learn to prioritize yourself. I learned again that, going back to this theme, that I am enough, right? That, when you have this identity crisis, you're trying to figure out now, who is this? Who
You've
is
been
this
stripped of
person?
you've been stripped of what your physical, you've been stripped of
It
your
was crazy.
career, right?
I mean,
Like,
Confidence.
yeah, I had missing body parts, for God's sake, right? And so that's really what got me to the, I am enough, and after cancer, I had clarity on being authentically me, right? And I had clarity that I didn't need to be anybody else. And I'd say another lesson. Of course, all these lessons are in my book plus some. One lesson I learned is that legacies are not made by what you build; they're made by the people you touch along the way, right? The lives you touch along the way. So to me, it's really important to touch people, not in a creepy way.
appropriately, we like to say,
We
yeah,
joke about that all the
appropriately.
time with that. Yes, so you're good. You fit right in with our group saying that.
So it's kind of like, at the end of the day, time is finite, so make it count, right? Make it count that you were here.
I'm
So,
listening to everything that you're talking about, legacy, the joke about touching there, time being finite. It sure sounds to me like you are a member of the Win Make Give family, whether you know it or not, because those are the lessons that we keep sharing with people again and again and again. So, folks, it sounds to me like when it comes out, if you're hearing this before May or you're listening to this episode after May, You Are Enough by Charlene Wheeless might definitely be a book worth checking out. Go visit Amazon and find that book and get a copy into your hands.
thank you. Yeah, I'm very proud of the book because it is very authentic and honest, and I talk about the good, bad, the ugly, and the indifferent. And I made a commitment to myself that I would, tell the unvarnished truth, because people need to know that it's okay to not be okay sometimes. That even people who are inspiring need to be inspired, right? And that it's just all okay, right? And so yeah, and in the book, I talk about being afraid that my husband was going to leave me, right? 50% of women, have partner abandonment when they go through cancer, and particularly breast cancer. I talk about that. I talk about being so depressed that I wanted to die. I just didn't want to die from cancer, right? But I didn't want this life that I woke up to. And so I think that people carry all this stuff around with them, and nobody talks about it, so then you feel like you're alone, right? And that's a horrible feeling. And so for people I know who say to me, gosh, Charlene, you're so strong, you're so resilient, you're so this, I wanted people to know that yes, I'm all those things, but not all the time. Right.
Mm,
And that's okay. It doesn't
that's a great
mean,
message.
that you've failed. It just means that you're human.
What a great message. Now, Charlene, there are people listening to this episode right now that want to reach out to you. They want to connect with you. They want to follow you. They want to message you, or they just want to learn more about you. How
Mhm.
can they? Where can they go? What are your websites, social media?
Mhm.
Send them wherever you want
Sure. So my website is charlenewheeless.biz, biz. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So hit me up on LinkedIn at Char Wheeless and on Instagram at Char Wheeless. There's a theme going here.
them.
Um, I've got a few rogue TikTok videos out there, but I don't recommend you look me up there.
Well,
And
now you know Bob's doing it as we speak.
I
I
know,
don't. I don't
with
have.
my
I'm
daughters,
not. I'm
yeah,
not hip enough for TikTok yet. I'll go follow you on Instagram. That's about the
yeah.
extent of my hipness.
That was my first craze when COVID and the shutdown first hit. That was kind of, I was all
You
about
were
TikTok.
dancing in that beautiful living room back there. Is that what you've
Right.
been doing on TikTok?
Oh yeah, outside the whole bit. It was a lot of fun. But seriously, on LinkedIn, of course, and I do respond when people hit me up and when people ask me questions. I've got a great series, a three-parter that I put on. It's both on my website, on my blog, but also on LinkedIn about um, what does this social and racial movement that we're in look like to a mixed race family? Because my husband is white, and our two children, of course, then are biracial. Really honest and raw from both my husband and my kids' perspectives. So I am as authentic on all of my social media channels, and I really welcome people to hit me up if you have a question, if you're struggling with something, you just need a little inspiration, I gotcha. You know, I gotcha. It's about the people you touch along the way.
Awesome.
Appropriately.
That's fantastic because we're strong on that legacy message. Okay, and we are also strong on the giving of win, make, give. And in season 2, we're focused not only on talking about winning, but we're talking about living up to that giving. And for every listen that this episode gets within the first 30 days of airing, we're going to make a donation to a charity of your choice, Charlene. So where are we going to be supporting with this episode?
Well, my favorite charity is the United Network for Organ Sharing. It's UNOS is for organ donation. My mother died in her late 50s, having her second heart transplant, and her first transplant failed. She had that in her early 50s, and she spent a year in the hospital waiting for another organ, another heart to come available. And I saw up close what that looks like and what that feels like, and the importance of organ donation. And although her second heart transplant didn't work, she died on the table. I'm so thankful to the people who donate their organs to help others. That I mean, you're giving life. And so, well, and it's so interesting because I know people always expect me to say that it's breast cancer, um, but you donate your organs, you can help a lot of people, with one last gift, and so that is near and dear to me.
What a legacy the people who are doing that donation are
Mhm.
leaving by being able to touch people. My uncle was benefited for many years thanks to organ
Mhm.
transplant as well. And while we might not donate now because we're still alive, our actual organs, we will absolutely make a donation on your behalf based on the listen. So, folks, if you've enjoyed hearing the message that Charlene had to share with us today, please share this episode with as many people as possible. Let them find out that they are enough. Let them hear from this kick ass woman about breaking down those barriers and the lessons learned from being invisible and from fighting through cancer. And make sure you've ordered her book, but share the episode. because the more people we can get to listen to this, the more we're going to make on that donation. So as we wrap this up, Bob, thanks for joining us again today on the interview. Charlene, thank you
Charlene.
so much for taking the time and coming and joining us and bringing your puppy.
Yes, of course. He's just in and out now, isn't he?
Sure was. We loved having him here. It kept my dog happy to be able to see your dog. And there goes for anybody watching us on our YouTube channel. And if you're on Facebook, make sure you join us, facebook.com/group/win-make-give, where we will post the link to Charlene's book when it is released, so you can make sure you get a copy of it. Until our next episode, please remember, do good.